From Arts Edge at the John F. Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., this is Hey, Watch This! A look at the music behind TV theme songs. I'm Paige Hernandez. If you're home just hanging around the house, there's a good chance you'll hear them.
You couldn't help but have this thing burnt into your cerebral cortex.
After a couple of thousand hearings, it becomes part of your DNA. You know, your brain is just, it's embedded.
If you're waiting for something important, you're glad to hear them.
When you hear certain music, you feel certain things.
Over the years, they've been some of the most popular songs in the country.
Creating the music for themes for TV required the same ability and talent as writing a hit song.
They can be a song that you share with your parents.
That's the way they all became the Brady Bunch, the Brady Bunch.
They can be something you sing with your friends on the bus.
Who lives in a pineapple under the sea?
SpongeBob SquarePants!
Absorbent and yellow and porous is he.
And even when you can't sing them,
I challenge you right now to sing the theme song from Seinfeld, or even hum it.
they get you ready for what's coming up.
It was almost like a promise.
TV theme songs are as old as TV. If you go all the way back to the 1940s, when only a handful of people had television, TV shows have opened with some peppy music, usually with catchy words. There are lots of reasons why TV shows have theme songs, but in the earliest years, the theme song had only one point. Robert Thompson is a professor of television and popular culture at Syracuse University.
In the very earliest days of TV, the purpose of a TV theme song was to actually be the first commercial in the program.
Oh, we're the men of Texaco. We work from Maine to Mexico. There's nothing like this Texaco of ours. Our show tonight is powerful.
Back in those early years, one company would sponsor a whole show. All the commercials would be for that one thing. The show would even have the company's name, like the show you're hearing right now.
Its title was the Texaco Star Theater, and it was sponsored by Texaco Oil and Gasoline Products.
We're the merry Texaco men. Tonight we may be showmen. Tomorrow we'll be servicing your cars.
The curtain opens, and there's four guys dressed as gas station attendants standing in a chorus line.
Join the ranks of those who know and fill your tank with Texaco.
And then they continue a couple of verses that actually enumerate the various levels of gasoline they have, Sky Chief and Fire Chief.
Fire Chief, fill up with Fire Chief. You'll find that Texaco's the finest friend your car has
This
ever.
whole song goes by, it's maybe 2.5 minutes long, and the star of the show has not yet been mentioned.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, introducing America's #1 television star.
As more people got TVs and advertising rates went up, it got too expensive for one company to sponsor a whole show. So in the 50s, the theme song stopped being a big commercial. Instead, it became like an alarm clock. TV shows were on at a specific time back then. There were no DVRs. If you missed the show, you just missed it. The theme song reminded you that the show was coming on. After all, Professor Thompson says, the TV was right there in the middle of the house.
So the TV would often be on, but the phone would ring, somebody would ring the doorbell, the timer would ring on the oven. People were doing all kinds of other things. And when a theme song came on, it announced that, okay, time to come back, we're starting. It was almost like like a bell rings to tell you the class is about to start.
The theme song has another role. While the first TV themes were a commercial for the sponsor, today they're kind of like a commercial for the show. Think about the last time you watched a show like Phineas and Ferb. While the theme song was playing,
it would show a bunch of scenes that would indicate what you're about to see. It was almost like a promise.
Like maybe building a rocket or fighting a mummy or climbing up the Eiffel Tower.
Almost like, here's what's in store for you.
Surfing tidal waves, creating nanobots or locating Frankenstein's brain. It's over here!
Of course, there are a lot of shows now that don't have a theme song at all. Or if they do, it's only one note. Shows like Lost. That trend of shorter and shorter theme songs came in the 1980s when people first got TV remotes. The people who made the show started to worry. If we spend all that time on a theme song, people will check out what else is on, and maybe they'll never come back. That's a far cry from the 1960s.
There's a man who leads a life of danger.
Back then, TV theme songs were some of the most popular songs in the country. This is one called Secret Agent Man that went to #1 in the country. Professor Thompson says that kept up through the 1980s.
There was a series called The Greatest American Hero. This had lyrics to it. That became a big top 10 hit.
Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. I never thought I could feel so free.
And all the way into the 1990s.
Now this is a story all about how my life got flipped, turned upside down. And I'd like to take a minute, just sit right there. I'll tell you how I became the prince of a town called Bel Air.
To write a TV theme song, you turn to someone with a particular set of skills.
I had sort of a pretty successful career as a composer, writing commercials for a lot of major clients.
That's Scott Schreer. In 1993, Scott wrote one of the best-known TV theme songs around today.
I'm basically a drummer, so I always approach things from a very bombastic point of view.
So how do you get to the point where you're writing a theme song that might be heard by 1 billion people during the Super Bowl? Well, it's not like you sit around thinking up theme songs all day and then you send one in. Scott graduated college in the mid-1970s, and for the next 20 years, he was writing songs for commercials.
I've had opportunities that in my wildest dreams growing up as a kid, I would never imagine myself being in those situations.
Other theme song writers chose other paths.
My goal was to be this famous classical music composer and win a Pulitzer Prize and get my PhD and teach in college, and I think that was every student's goal.
That's Lenny Williams. If you watch pretty much anything about animals on the National Geographic Channel, the Smithsonian Channel, and Discovery, Lenny wrote the theme music, and most of the other music too. Scott Schreer says that when he first got into the business, there were a lot of debates about whether the people who did this kind of work were as important as the people who wrote the songs you heard on the radio. But in the early 1990s, he says that started to change because the same people who were doing one kind of writing during the day were doing the other one at night.
Because there were a lot of guys that were moonlighting during the day or at night doing commercials that were also on tour with, really well-known artists and bands. And it became a point where the talent in creating the music for commercials and themes for TV required the same ability and talent as, writing a hit song.
So the people at Fox Sports, 2 executives named George and David, knew who to call when they needed a theme song, although they really didn't know what they wanted.
David had taken his child to an amusement park in LA and loved the Batman music that they played on the ride. So he told George that he thought the NFL theme should be like a Batman on steroids kind of sound to it.
Getting that kind of vague request, make it like such and such, according to Lenny Williams, that's a pretty common thing with TV themes.
Sometimes we get things like, I want the score to be very orange. So I have a different boss on every project, so I've learned how to communicate with bosses that don't necessarily know how to communicate with me.
In the best situation, when the right people have talked to the right composer and given the right advice, the result can be a song that millions of people sing all over the country and all over the world. In a way, Scott Schreer says, the TV theme song has come full circle because today, just like in the 1940s, it's still kind of just a commercial.
It's supposed to be the signature. It's supposed to get you in the mood. The minute you hear that sound, the bell rings and, you're hungry.
Thanks for listening. I'm Paige Hernandez for Arts Edge, a program of the Education Department of the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts.